are you listening to? Straight Talk with Kim and Carolyn.
Welcome to Straight Talk with Kim and Carolyn. I'm Kim.
And I'm Carolyn.
And yeah, we talked about the difference in our voices.
Yeah, there's a difference, but hey. You know.
Okay.
I never sound joyful with this voice. I have noticed. It's
really?
really difficult for me to have joyful sounding emotions because it's so heavy. But anyway, go on.
Okay, so the Democrats are in control of Congress and occupying the White House, which means it is safe for Second Amendment. We don't have to be watching out for
That's
anything.
why we're all limited in the amount of ammo we can buy every month because they're pumping it out and nobody's buying it. It's just so readily available.
Yeah. So, well, we now have with us, we have Clark Aposhian with the Utah Shooting Sports Council, which goes to show our Second Amendment is not all self-defense.
Yeah.
But this is our Utah resident expert on Second Amendment. We got to throw in Kurt Oda too.
True.
So we have a few really good solids, but Clark really is our leader on policy and watching what's going on across the country. So Clark, welcome and tell us what we need to be worried about when it comes to our Second Amendment rights when Biden is our president and Nancy Pelosi's in the House.
That's a good point. When we talk about occupying, the Democrats are occupying the White House and Congress. It's much like the Russians are occupying the Ukraine. It's the same thing, and it doesn't bode well. So they've got, it's all about registration, and everything they do has a registration component, but they don't say that. Registration of your firearms component to it. Everything from red flag laws or extreme risk protection orders to the so-called ghost guns or kit guns. Mm-hmm. It's all about, we want to know. The government wants to know who has the guns. And I don't remember anything in the Founding Fathers literature, their manuscripts, when they were creating the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments to the Constitution about, we need to make sure that the government knows who has the guns.
Okay.
I can't remember anything in there about that.
So Clark, for the people out there who think, so what's the big deal? We register lots of things. We register our cars. Can you articulate why that is so frightening to those of us who understand why we don't want to be on the government list?
Well, first off, there could be two reasons, to register. One, they want to tell you, is so that when a criminal buys a gun through a federal firearms license manufacturer, which they don't do. They don't buy them from gun store, they steal them. But they're saying that when a criminal goes to the extent to go ahead and buy a gun, and that firearm is then not registered but listed and can be traced, they want you to believe that criminals then commit their crimes and leave their gun at the scene. For some, I don't know on what universe they're thinking, but and then they want to say, and that's really the only way typically that they would be left at a scene. It was for a criminal to leave it. But then they want to know who owns the gun. All right, well, for a criminal to be caught at the scene with the gun, they already know whose gun it was. It was the criminals, whether they had it legally or not. Yeah. So their logic is when you look at it, is just beyond. Now, what do they really want it for? Well, we know from experience that right now, if you have an AR-15 that hasn't been dumbed down to an extreme amount and registered, it's illegal in California and in some states. I think Massachusetts too. And they would know that you have these things because it's registered. They literally register these guns. And when people come to me and they say, well, I have a gun and it's not registered, I'll say, good for you, because there literally is most of the United States, you don't register guns. And in fact, even if you wanted to register a gun in, say, states like Utah, there's no mechanism for which to register the gun. And we've been doing just fine. But what they say when they talk about this universal background check what they're really saying is universal literal registration, of which your name, the firearm, and the serial number is associated with you, and it would be on a huge database. The only way you can have so-called universal background checks is to register all those guns now and register all the firearms that had been previously owned and purchased. Because you could always just say, well, I bought the gun, before the registration. So they're going to change that. That's what they want. The same thing with so-called ghost guns without a serial number. There are two kinds of guns without serial numbers. One, firearms that are held by criminals and in which they literally scratch or grind off the serial number. Or two, the homemade hobbyist guns that are made via a kit or just, raw kind of material. And the federal government has never in our history of over 200 years required you to put a serial number on a gun that you make for yourself. Now, if I were to make that for myself and sell it to someone, it has to have a serial number on it at that point. But if it's for my own use, and the same laws apply to even if I make my own gun, I cannot be a prohibited person. I can't have a warrant out. I can't be a felon. I can't be, have an injunction against me, something like that, and make my own gun. That's not a loophole around it in any way.
Okay, so Utah's pretty good. We've had some really good legislation passed in the last couple years, signed into law, some really good ones. Tell us what those have been.
Preemption, the preemption bill, we have been trying, and it's so weird that it was hard to get this thing passed.
Okay, tell us what that is so people know what that is.
So, okay, preemption. So preemption basically is, it's kind of the thing, it says that rather than have your individual cities and counties and even towns create their own firearm ordinances, and that would differ from Salt Lake City to Sandy to West Valley and so on and so forth, or county by county, the state has seen in its infinite wisdom and across this nation, preemption of firearm laws is the standard. That means that the state and only the state, and they guard it jealously, the ability to have gun laws like magazine restrictions or AR15 restrictions or the number of guns or whatever it is. Now, with exception, they have said, with very minor exception, a city, but not a county, may create a firearm law to discuss the discharge of a firearm within city limits. And that's about it.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And counties and other entities, actually the state forester has been given authority in the last 10, 12 years to close off certain specific geographical locations to shooting during high fire dangers and, times like that when it's ill-advised to go shooting out in the brush. So we have given that. But those exceptions prove the absolute rule is Utah, the state of Utah, the legislature holds the ability and the only ability to make firearm laws. Now, interesting, and so we passed that, finally got that passed. Don't know why it took so long, but there was I'll just tell you, there was some resistance in the Senate. There was just some flat out resistance in the Senate.
So why? Where is that coming from? I mean, we have a super majority of Republicans in both chambers of our legislature. So why are these things happening?
Well, you know how laws are made. It's that, and how laws are held up. The folks that do it without leaving fingerprints. So there you go. How can I? Kim, you know what I'm talking about. They don't leave fingerprints, yet the bill doesn't move. When you poll the Senate, we had, it was a party line vote, and so we win. You poll the House, you have a party line vote, and we win. So why is it being held up in rules? Why was it being held up, on the floor?
Boy, this was the year. I mean, this was the year everybody's saying why was so much held up in rules. And you know what it comes down to too frequently is if it's an election year.
Could be, but we got it passed. And we had a promise from Senator Adams, from President Adams, that he would do that, and that was earlier in the year before the session started, and he held to it. And so we got it passed, and it went well, and it wasn't even on the last night of the session. So what that means is now It basically, we've always had preemption, but it added a little strength to it, and it added some teeth, a penalty if you violate that, and a cause of action for an individual to have a cause of action against whatever entity, and that includes non-governmental entities that are hired by or contracted with.
Okay, so these are things like the Salt Palace, some third-party contract manager of the Salt Palace that said, no concealed carry, constitutional carry, but they are actors of the county or the city when they are acting in that capacity. So the governmental entity cannot use a third-party contractor to kind of do their
all along we know that Salt Lake County has been doing this and just telling on the sly their contractor, their management company for, say, the Expo Center in Sandy or something like that, to ban the guns. When we know all along it wasn't the contractor, it was Salt Lake County Mayor Jenny Wilson that was doing this, and we pulled it, and we don't even think there was a deficiency in the statute, but if there was, we closed that loophole.
It makes it clear. So there's a city that has been resistant.
Well, in this case, it was the county.
Or the county, okay.
It wasn't necessarily just the county, but in this case, it was the county was the biggest transgressor of it. Now, oddly enough, so we at the Utah Shooting Sports Council got word in the last few weeks that a city down in southern Utah, a wonderful, beautiful city in southern Utah, literally had 2 ordinances on their books, and they've had them since at least 2013. One of them that said, you shall not possess a firearm, regardless of any exceptions, concealed carry permits, open carry, whatever. You shall not possess a firearm in a city park. And then they had another ordinance that said you cannot have a firearm on an ATV. You're traveling on an ATV. You cannot have a firearm.
Hunters don't ever do that. Or
yeah. So we immediately reached out to the city manager and to the city attorney, and we heard back. But we asked specifically, we want to know, since 2013, how many people have been arrested, charged, and/or prosecuted with this, because we're going to go back and revisit those, every one of those. They told us in an email that no one had ever been charged or prosecuted or arrested for those, but I think we may do a more formal grammar request on that. But they had then now promised us that they are now looking into those and will fix those. And stay tuned, so to speak. Stay tuned. We're going to make sure.
Okay, so let's back up a couple years ago when we finally got constitutional carry.
Yeah, and so it just this last week, it's been 1 year since it's been into effect on May 5th.
Okay, that's huge. That's those two things, the preemption and constitutional carry.
Yeah.
I think are exciting things.
Big changes for the state.
In fact, and I can tell you, so Utah was the 20th state, I think it was. Yeah, 20th state to adopt it. And so we're just kind of riding that wave across the nation. Now we have 26, I believe it's 26 states that are now permitless carry. You don't have to ask the man for permission. Interestingly enough, I did the math. I looked at the entire square miles of the United States, including Alaska and Hawaii, and started adding up all the states. We have over 68% of the landmass in the United States permitless carry.
Is safe to walk on in that much territory.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, without concern. But then you have to figure how many of those states have their land owned and controlled by the federal government, or so much of it. And do the same laws apply? Tell me this. So if a state has permitless carry, and in Utah we have 67% of our land is federally owned and controlled. Owned and controlled. I'm going to put the owned in quotes.
Air quotes.
And so how do these kinds of state land or state laws impact on federal lands?
Including our parks, our national parks, our national monuments, BLM, all kinds of.
Yeah.
That's a very good question. So primarily we're dealing with BLM, and it's interesting because we worked with Representative Ken Ivory, who I think was just on. He's a wonderful representative. Really appreciate his leadership in so many things, including the public lands. And so, the way the BLM kind of works is, as far as gun laws go, as far as the simple possession or carrying and that kind of thing, they generally go to the county's laws. They follow the county of which that is in. Well, county can't have laws in Utah, gun laws, so they go to the state. But we actually we had to revise some of their understanding of state gun laws back about 8 years ago, because they used to just automatically in the national park or in the national forests and in the BLM land and that kind of stuff, they would just defer to the county gun laws. Well, we don't have county gun laws here in Utah. We have state gun laws, and that's it. So they've been pretty good. Now, national parks, believe it or not, in President Obama's very first term, he signed a law that allows us, that had been a 35-year ban on carrying guns in national parks. You can now carry a gun in a national park as long as the state in which you're in allows for you to carry it otherwise in any other open public space. You can't carry it in the buildings within the national park, but out hiking around you can. And found it very interesting. A lot of people wonder, how could Obama have signed that? Believe it or not, well, it was part of the Credit Card Reform Act.
Well, that makes sense. Like everything
how
else.
they slip things. They wanted the Credit Card Reform Act more than they didn't want that. And you know how we slip things into bills, or they slip things into bills. I don't care how it got in. It's a W for us.
So tell me this. During this time, we've had the change to permitless carry, constitutional carry within the state of Utah. But I know a lot of people are still, or I've heard that a lot of people are still taking the course, because there's a lot of learning and information that people get when they take that course. What have you seen during this time? What change?
Well, I have seen less people taking the course, but let me give you the three things that you get with a concealed carry permit. You get the ability to buy a gun without having to go through another background check, because technically if you have a permit, your background is checked every 24 hours anyway, and they still have to run it through BCI, but you don't have to pay the $7.50 to run the background check. 2, you can carry in schools. So if you're 21, K through 12, you can. It doesn't work for the provisional permit, but at 21 and older, you can use that concealed carry permit to carry in K through 12 schools. And if you're at a university, you can be 18, but you have to have a permit to carry. And 3, there was 3 things. Oh, third is the reciprocal or recognition agreements between other states. Right now, we can carry in over 36 states if you have a concealed carry permit from Utah. So if you're just using the common sense, we call it common sense carry or constitutional carry, permitless carry, you lose out on a lot of that reciprocity, recognition, carry in schools, and bypassing the background check fee.
Okay, I want to give just like a little bit of prop to another organization. So sorry, Clark, your organization is amazing, but there are a lot of women that this is still a little bit of an intimidating space for them. And so to train and learn some of this and even, have range time. Well-Armed Woman is a really fun organization. Connie Peterson that I've gotten to know, Michelle Camp in the last couple of years, really, they have created just a different space for women to step out, and it's a whole different kind of girls' night. So that's another great organization for any.
Kim, I'm going to second you. I am going to second you for the fantastic work that Well-Armed Women does. My own wife, Casey Jane, is a member of Well-Armed Women, and Connie, and they hold classes, women-only classes. They lobby up on Capitol Hill. They are a fantastic group, and they're part of a much bigger national group as well. And I think Utah has one of the best, if not the best, state groups out here. Well-Armed Women, go to that and make sure your moms, your daughters, your sisters, your wives are part of that.
And it's more than just learning about your weapon and learning about the laws. That there really is also a self-defense and awareness, a risk awareness assessment component to that. So I think that's valuable. So speaking of self-defense, what else should we be watching from Congress? And you've got a court case that's out there you're working on.
So as far as Congress goes, well, they're going to try to ban some of the accessories for AR-15s and that. And what's interesting is the ATF is doing it as if they had lawmaking ability, and we all know that, from our ethic or from government 101 classes, Congress makes the law, not the executive, not the judicial. But anyway, so they've been trying to bypass
you're really
that.
confusing some things now. That's really confusing.
It's 2022. 2022. Law is now made by the executive branch.
So the ATF, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, which is the regulatory agency under the executive branch, the president's branch, has been essentially writing law. They aren't supposed to write law. And in fact, so about 3 years ago, when the ATF came out and said a bump stock, which is literally a stock, a plastic stock, it doesn't really have any moving parts. It doesn't have a trigger. It is literally a stock that goes on the end of a rifle. They said that is a machine gun. And I cannot see by what reach that they arrived at this. So I sued them. And I have a lawsuit against the U.S. Attorney General. At the time, it was before. Now it's Garland. And the ATF. And it's Aposhian v. Garland right now. And right now, it is at the United States Supreme Court. It's docket number 21-159. And I just saw today that it has been scheduled for a conference hearing on the 12th of this month.
Oh.
For a conference hearing before the United States Supreme Court. Aposhian v. Garland, you can look that up. And it deals with the overreach of government, especially the ATF in this case. And hey, I'm not a huge fan of bump stocks. I thought they were interesting and so on and so forth. But a bump stock is the vehicle to which we were able to get this overreach in front of the United States Supreme Court. Bloomberg Law has said that Aposhian v. Garland is one of the 5 cases that the United States should hear that they haven't heard yet.
So ATF and Second Amendment, not totally so special. Every agency is doing this, it seems. Every agency in our federal government is writing law and ignoring Congress way too much.
Yeah. And Congress has allowed it to happen. I mean, when you were in the state legislature, there was a lot of discussion about this very thing on a couple of issues. This is a few years ago where the governor's office seemed to be overstepping. And for too long, the legislative branches have allowed it to go on. And when it goes without challenge, it just grows, right?
Right. And former Speaker of the House, Greg Hughes, so I mean, this is just maybe my favorite quote from him. And the thing that he taught constantly when he was my speaker was to jealously guard your constitutional authority to legislate. Do not give over anything. That's right. Which also means don't leave holes in your legislation that the executive branch is going to fill in those holes. Yeah. So, but we have a rich tradition of that now at the federal government level, that the federal agencies write law, Congress lets them. Sometimes Congress goes too far with maybe overstepping what the executive branch should do. So, ATF is one of those.
Right. It's these very general, broad, and Senator Lee talks about this all the time. These general, broad, almost statements, and then the executive branch fills in everything else. Right. Now, our state doesn't operate like that, but I think there have been a lot of examples of the executive branch getting away with.
Oh, absolutely.
Pushing too hard and not enough pushback from the legislative in the state as well.
So when you're elected to the House, jealously guard your constitutional authority and blessing and privilege to responsibility to legislate, and don't give it away.
And know what it is. I think to the other
to the other branch. But all right, well, did we lose Clark? Aposhian?
No, I'm right here.
Oh, there you
Can
are.
you
Oh, we
All
can't
right.
see you.
Okay. Any final thoughts in Second Amendment world?
Boy, guns save lives. And that's
Full
what
stop.
I'll end with when I
Full
don't know
stop.
anything to say. Guns save lives, yeah.
All right. Where can people follow
Mm-hmm.
you? Find your organization. Where can we follow your court case?
Utah Shooting Sports Council, USSC, Utah Shooting Sports Council, which is oddly enough the same as the United States Supreme Court, USSC. But if they just go to SCOTUS, SCOUT, whatever, SCOTUS, you can find the
US.
SCOTUS blog or the Supreme Court of the United States, and just look a docket search, and you can check the
Okay.
you can check to see where my court case is. And Aposhian v. Garland, I'm pretty sure there's no other Aposhian cases on there. So, but then go to UtahShootingSportsCouncil.org, UtahShootingSportsCouncil.org, and listen to my radio show every Saturday on KNRS, Gun Radio Utah. No apologies.
All right.
Thank you so
Fantastic.
much for joining us.
So
No, thank you. Excellent.
thanks. So we got in an Armenian reference.
Yeah, I missed it because I thought.
Just a potion being possibly the only a potion
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
in any court dockets. And so our producer, our good producer, is also.
Armenian. Armenian, yeah.
And
there's some pride there.
There's a little bit of pride there. So, wanting to make those connections publicly. Fosmu's not Armenian sounding, though. I don't know what that is.
It's a certain dialect of Armenian.
Yeah. Yeah, I bet it is.
Yeah, mostly. I'm mostly most familiar with the food. So that's where my pride and joy is.
Okay. What do we need to know about Armenian food? Did you feed your mother Armenian food for Mother's Day this last weekend?
No.
Or did she make it for it?
No. We treated her to some good American food.
I'm not quite so sure about your commitment here to Armenian food. I don't know. I think he's just saying it for special attention.
Well, and I don't think he
Ethnic pride.
I don't think he can make it either. So
Yeah, it just might come
people
down
have
to
to
that.
prove to me if they think they can cook certain food. Like
All right, next episode.
Okay. I'll bring some Armenian food to the table. I do think as we finish out, there are a lot of things going on right now. We have a new solicitor, well, not new, a couple years, I think, in our AG's office who was hired, it seems to me, for the explicit purpose of suing the federal government, knowing what was coming. We have the leak that we talked about last week in the SCOTUS case, but apparently a little more leaking going on there in recent days as well, with just individuals within the court speaking to the press without the authority to do that and anonymously. And it sounds like that opinion that had been initially written in February will pretty much stand, or at least the votes are not being changed. And the pressure, according to whoever's leaking this information from the court, but the pressure that is being put on the conservative justices to change is not making a difference in their opinion. And I just think we really are.
when you hope, and that was the concern is can
Yeah.
pressure come to bear one way or the other, and whether it stays the same or changes, it would just be hard.
Yeah, but you know what keeps coming to my mind? We talk about repeatedly, I think, us and people in the public, major concerns about what's going on in schools, right? What's going on in libraries, our kids are being taught. They are more confused than ever when they're taught with these ideologies that don't allow them to really have confidence in themselves. And then these things like the institutions and the lack of trust that we are all gaining or that's growing in all of our institutions, including our official institutions and non-official institutions. But the phrase that keeps coming to my mind is that the world is in commotion. It is in commotion.
commotion.
There is nothing that is stable right now.
I
There
bought
is-
chickens.
You did buy chickens, and I'm buying chickens. I just haven't yet because I have some area that my landscaper's doing a little work on so I can put my chickens there. And so, yeah, your chickens just went outside for the first time yesterday,
yeah.
right when the cold hit.
I'm watching Tim Pool's Chicken City.
Okay, I haven't watched it, but he talks about it. I love Tim Pool. What is it pretty
I
interesting?
don't know. I followed a link and I watched them building the city. So it's like all these coops. Mm-hmm. It looks like a little bird town. Like I don't know. It's cute and it's fun and it's protein and it's a little bit of prepping. It's a little bit of self-reliance.
Yeah. It's good. I think it's also good. I mean, I'm doing it so I have those eggs, but I think it's also good for us and for our children to have that connection to their food. And I think I've lost a lot of trust in my food sources too.
A little bit of husbandry, kind of learning some of that agriculture stuff. But we'll see if we're successful.
I've raised cows before. Well, I did once. They really freaked me out. But
bees are next for me. Bees.
Bees. Yeah, you've said that. I don't think I'm going to go there, but I will do more planting, and I'm buying the chickens. It does scare me a little bit, that commitment. I have a friend who said to me once, I don't know how you've been married for so long, 29 years. This year will be 30 years, because I have trouble with commitment completely. I don't like committing to a lunch date, let alone an animal that's going to live a while. And luckily, I have successfully committed to my husband and my children. I haven't gotten rid of any of them.
And a podcast, and a weekly podcast.
This is true.
But now you're going to commit. You're going to commit to something that you get eggs from. Breakfast food.
That's
you
true.
Get something back.
And you don't get that from your husband.
But that is true. I am going to have issues though after they stop producing because I don't have the heart to get rid of them. I have someone who told me actually that they're. With the chickens, that after they stopped producing, they would put them up on KSL. Or someone told me they had a friend who did this. They'd put them up on KSL, and it would always be a family that would come and get the chicken to eat. And I'm sorry, you've given me eggs for years. You're going to live out the rest of your life.
Well, they say don't name your food.
I know.
In the farmyard, but all of ours are named after rappers.
Okay, you know what? We're going to close with this.
Slim Shady is.
These are hilarious. Okay, you've got to give us the names.
I'm trying to remember all of them.
I have them written somewhere.
We've got Tupac. We've got Slim Shady.
Yeah.
We've got, oh my gosh,
my kids want to steal your chicken names. They're really good.
I remember all of them.
Yeah.
Meg the. Oh, it was Meg the Stallion. What is this? Oh, Meg the Talon.
The Talon. I actually had to ask my kids, I don't get this one. And so they told me.
Meg the Talon.
Yeah,
I don't remember the other ones.
Yeah, they're good. And my children would like to steal those names for our chickens. I said, you can name them whatever you want. But we named our cows food names. I can't remember. The steak was not one of the names, but they were similar, like brisket. They were names like that.
Well,
okay,
makes it just as easier to part with them if you have to.
Yeah, anyway. It still was not easy. I could have nothing to do with that slaughtering, but the meat was delicious. So anyway, thanks for joining us for another episode of Kim and Carolyn, and we're just going to say it one more time. I'm Carolyn.
I'm Kim.
And we will look forward to seeing you again next week. Thanks. Please do remember to like us, share us everywhere you can. I did get a notice last week that podcasts will no longer be supported on Facebook after June 3rd. And that is how we've gotten a lot of the word out, although that is not where most people listen to our podcast.
Rumble, iTunes.
Yeah, Rumble.
It's weird. Facebook lets you, or it has up to this point, lets you have your podcast embedded in your page, but we also have the video versions as well. So if you're watching / listening on Facebook, you still can. you're not going to lose out that capability.
Oh, okay. Thanks for that, because I don't know anything about it. I just got that email and it freaked me out. So, okay. Well, thank you, Fosmu. And thanks again, Fosmu, for another successful episode of Straight Talk with Kim and Carolyn. We'll see you all next week.
Introduce ourselves.
Yeah, I said that to us.
Yeah.
I said that to us.
We can talk about Ken Ivory before he comes on.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Like,
my
what if-
gosh. Yeah. Did you see what he was wearing yesterday?
Oh my!
Ken, we're kidding you.
About me? What you talking about me? Are you talking about me?
We didn't even see you yesterday. I was hoping that would be obvious enough when I said it, but